Hello, friends, and welcome to Mousterpiece Melodies, a podcast that's listening to the songs of Disney movies, past and present. I'm Josh Spiegel.
And I'm Scott Renshaw. Thanks for joining us on this comprehensive and encyclopedic compendium of all things Disney music. Now playing Mufasa, the Lion King.
And before we get into our discussion, thank you so much for listening. No matter how you're checking us out, we hope you like what you're hearing. And if you are, we'd appreciate it if you could rate and review Mousterpiece Melodies on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever app you're using to listen.
That's right. Let everyone know how much you love the show and tell your friends to do the same. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Scott Renshaw and read my film criticism at cityweekly.net.
And you can follow me on Blue Sky at Mousterpiece and email me at mousterpiececinema@gmail.com with any comments, questions, or opinions you'd like to share. Now that the housekeeping is out of the way, let's start talking about the songs of Mufasa, the Lion King. And to do that, we're thrilled to bring into the show a very special guest. He is the chief film critic for the Boston Globe. Odie Henderson, welcome to Mousterpiece Melodies. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
We are thrilled to have you here, especially because we're talking about a relatively recent film. We're talking about the songs of Mufasa, the Lion King. This is, of course, the 2024 film from director Barry Jenkins in Walt Disney Pictures, featuring the voices of Aaron Pierre, Kelvin Harrison Jr., Tiffany Boone, and other actors whose names appeared in the track listing when I listened to these songs earlier today. That's a spoiler for later. Now, I am confident that we all saw this movie in our respective locations in theaters back in December, leading up to the Christmas release of the film. Now, I also think it is safe to say, and Odie, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think it's safe to say that none of us were super thrilled with the 2019 remake of The Lion King, directed by Jon Favreau. Now, that said, going into this one, thinking about it kind of holistically, not just specific to the songs which were written primarily, but not entirely, by Lin-Manuel Miranda. There's also a couple of songs here co-written by Libo M, who had worked on the songs, the original Lion King. Going into this movie with the combination of it's a prequel to The Lion King, telling us the story of how Mufasa became the Lion King and how Scar got that scar of his and the same nickname. Thinking about the movie going into it, what were your expectations for the film, if not for the songs themselves?
Well, I thought the Lion King remake was probably one of the worst things I'd seen in a very long time. It not only was unnecessary, and I say this about all of these quote-unquote remakes, updates, whatever you want to call them, even the ones that I've enjoyed, I've said in every single review, stop me, I'm a broken record, this is completely unnecessary, and it's a cynical cash grab. Mm-hmm. And watching The Lion King, the remake, there's a scene in The Lion King, the original cartoon, where, remember, Simba looks in the water and he sees Mufasa, right? Mm-hmm. That exact same thing happens in the remake, but the lions were Botoxed. I couldn't tell who was who. And there's only so much expression that a lion can have on his face. I mean, the best thing about a lion is their mane and their roar. And so I thought it was just intolerable. And Timon and Pumbaa, who I get in trouble for saying how much I can't stand those characters, they were extremely obnoxious in the Lion King remake. So I couldn't stand it. So I went into this I didn't want to watch it. I'll be honest with you. I didn't want to review it. I had to review it, but I didn't want to watch it because I'm like, the last one was just so bad. And I think at this time we'd been like bombarded with maybe 2 or 3 more of the Disney remakes between The Lion King and this. And then, it's directed by Barry Jenkins. So there was a whole issue with, was he slumming, whatever. So I went in thinking that I was just going to despise it. And if nothing else, the technology has gotten better, or maybe the Botox on the lions has gotten better. So they're more expressive this time. So I like this a lot more than the Lion King remake. But then again, that's not saying very much. I mean, getting hit by a truck is probably just as good as the Lion King remake.
Fair enough. Scott, go for it.
I think I was pretty much in the same boat. I mean, I may disagree the extent to which the technology has improved, but I think there were sort of the 2 factors in terms of Mufasa, which is one, oh dear God, they're doing this thing again where they think that, photorealistic lions are as interesting to look at as hand-drawn animated lions, and they are not.
No.
They just are not. So there's that was not going to be different, but there was at least they're attempting a different story and not regurgitating the same one. So I think it would be fair to say I went in with slightly higher expectations just because there was at least going to be the attempt to tell a new story. This was a slightly less cynical cash grab.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I probably I'm probably the harshest on this new Mufasa, on the new film. I should be very clear, by the way. Scott and I spoke with Aisha Harris about the songs of Aladdin a couple months ago, and I should be doubly clear. We talked about these songs in the 1992 film as well as the way those songs appear in the Guy Ritchie remake, and in that discussion, I was horrified to realize that I was the only one of the three of us who had rewatched the remake of Aladdin. And some people could call this, that's an unwavering and disturbing amount of dedication. I look at approaching for this conversation as more of a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I did not rewatch Mufasa the Lion King in advance of this discussion. I did listen again to the songs, as mentioned, but this movie came out 6 months ago. It's hard to believe it's only been 6 months, but it has.
Really?
And wow. just over December 20th, 2024 is when this film came out in theaters. And my point here is I went into it like the two of you. I loathed the 2019 remake, and I must admit, I sadly have to correct a guess that Odie had. Since that film was released in July of 2019, there have been 7 other remakes or sequels to remakes of some kind between that version and Mufasa. There was the Maleficent sequel, there was the Lady and the Tramp remake, Mulan, Cruella, Pinocchio, Peter Pan and Wendy, and The Little Mermaid. That's a lot.
Yeah, and I blocked all that out of my mind. So
and that's the logical and sane approach, Odie. So kudos to you. My point being, so I walked into this movie very, very wary because on the one hand, I was thinking, Barry Jenkins is an excellent filmmaker. But when I heard that he was announced as the director, my first reaction was, boy, I wish more people had seen If Beale Street Could Talk, because it's one of those, it's not just a question, Odie, as you mentioned, of is he slumming, as like, is he doing this because he wasn't able to find the same kind of success with more personal projects, with projects that may have seemed more like something in his wheelhouse as opposed to a big budget, multi-$100 million film that is computer animation. I know some people in the industry like to call these live action remakes, and especially with this, it's like, no, I'm pretty sure they couldn't get those lions in real life to talk. Those are animated. I watched
peanut butter on their mouths.
That would be like a new version of Roar, that 1981 cult movie with Tippi Hedren. But anyway, so I walked into this very, very trepidatious, but I will admit I did have a little bit of hope, and it actually was related to the songs because, as Scott mentioned, the one thing this movie had going for it going in is it's not telling you a story you've already seen. So obviously one of the big points of antipathy that I know I had, and obviously lots of other folks had, with that Favreau remake was, I know this story well. I know this story very, very well. I've seen the animated film. It's not my personal favorite of the Disney Renaissance, but it's a movie I've seen a bajillion times, right? This one, if you want to tell me a new version of how Mufasa grew up, I have my own distaste of prequels because we all know where the story is going, but I can't compare it directly to anything else. So there was that, and the fact that you have songs from Lin-Manuel Miranda, who, of course, Hamilton, but also he wrote the songs for the original Moana. I think those songs are great. He wrote the songs for Encanto, for a couple of other films. So I was definitely hopeful for the songs, and you both have said to varying degrees the technology of how these lives are brought to life felt a little bit more realistic, perhaps. The songs, though, they're net new. So coming out of this, what was your reaction overall? We can go track by track soon. What was your reaction to these new songs in the world of The Lion King?
Well, I'm looking at my review here, and the line that I had was, they run the gamut from meh to extremely catchy. Which is typically the Lin-Manuel Miranda playbook. And I actually like him a lot more than a lot of people do. And I'm probably a little more forgiving of some of the stuff that he does than a lot of people are. But, he's done Encanto, and he's also done that Vivo. Was it Vivo? Which is probably
Yep,
the
Vivo.
worst,
Yeah.
worst songs that he wrote for anything, for that matter. But, you get used to what his style is. And I made a comment that he's trolling us on one of these songs, and we'll get to that. When we talk about that particular song, I'll reveal which one it is. But, I didn't really kind of go in thinking, well, he wrote the songs for this, and that's going to automatically save the movie, because again, I saw Vivo. But, I think he was the last person I was thinking about when I went in to see the Lion King sequel. So I figured, I don't think he really came into play until, obviously, I'm sitting there and the first song comes up, in the movie, which is the Nikki Noni Rose and Keith David song. So yeah, I like him a lot more than a lot of other people do, but I don't think he really factored in. I'll be honest with you, I was pissed off I had to be there. And it shocked me because I actually liked the movie. I gave it 3 stars. So, I was so surprised about that. But yeah, yeah.
Fair enough.
What to say about that, at least until we get to the songs themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think I'm also overall net positive, and we don't need to arm wrestle over it or anything, but I'm certainly a Lin-Manuel Miranda fan. We've talked, I think, just in general, that I am a musical theater person. I enjoy, and I think what I've always appreciated about an actual musical theater songwriter writing songs for movies, and that's obviously was true of Menken and Ashman. It's true of Stephen Schwartz. That those who have done these kinds of things understand how to use their songs as storytelling. It's not just a song dropped into the movie that could have been anywhere else and been just as successful. I mean, whatever else you want to think about certain songs in the original Lion King, some of them are storytelling songs and some of them are absolutely not. And generally speaking, these are songs that are in there to advance the story or advance the character in some way. And I thought they generally did that. I think we can also agree that there are some of them that really are very earwormy and others that aren't, whether it's a function of who they gave the song to sing, and that's part of some of the issues with it, but also just some of them are just, they work and they don't. But again, overall net positive, because I think they do what I want songs in a musical to do.
I think people that make musicals forget that the entire point of having a musical or a song in a musical, and this goes way back to, Broadway Melody, is that they are to propel the story. They're to kind of be the emotional element in the story. That's why I'll Do Anything, the James Brooks movie, doesn't make any sense because he took all the Prince songs out. And what people's white whales are things like the Magnificent Amberson footage. But my white whale is, I want to hear Nick Nolte singing Prince. And I'll never have that happen. So a lot of these songs that get put into these musicals are just there to either sell a record or because they had somebody there that could sing the song. But you're right, these songs, good and bad, they propel the story. And they tell you something about the characters.
They do. I think so. Listen, we're all to varying degrees fans of Lin-Manuel Miranda's work. Big fan of Hamilton. I think the songs in Moana are excellent. The songs in Encanto are there. We'll have that conversation at a later date on this show.
No.
Scott and I never talked about the film Encanto because we ended the old show before that movie came out. And those are definitely songs. My point being, I like Lin-Manuel Miranda. I was aware of his presence and I was very intrigued because I thought, okay, he clearly has shown he knows not just how to use songs to facilitate storytelling in a Broadway sense, but we know from movies like Moana that he has a really good ear for what people kind of want a Disney song to sound like. A song like Shiny feels like a really great, an underrated villain song, I would argue. And also him kind of, playing off of the David Bowie style glam rock. He knows his music pretty well, both pop music and Broadway music. And I was hopeful that he could figure out a way to fuse those here, especially since one of the many things I loathe about the 2019 remake is that Jon Favreau seemed to say, we're going to remake The Lion King. Oh, right, the songs. I guess we have to keep the songs somehow. The songs in that movie felt very weakly incorporated, as if he was almost embarrassed to have to deal with songs. And that's not the case here. Again, there are a handful of songs in the film, including it's funny, when you go to the track listing on the soundtrack, there's technically 7 original songs. One of them is written and performed solely by Lee Boem. It's the opening song in Ngomso. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. The other 6 are either written fully or co-written by Lin-Manuel Miranda and performed by actors within the film. And I think, on the one hand, as I said earlier, this movie does not have to worry about comparing itself directly to the original Lion King in terms of the story it's telling. As I was re-listening to the songs this morning, because I really procrastinated on when I was going to listen to these songs again, I was listening to them and I kept the soundtrack on afterwards. And the very first track right after the final song, which is Brother Betrayed, is called Destiny Reigns, and it's composed by Dave Metzger. But it's really just it's a reincorporation of one of Hans Zimmer's one of these sadder pieces within the composition of the original Lion King, because for people who don't remember, he wrote the score for the Lion King.
And he won the Oscar for it.
He did. He won the Oscar for it, and I'm just verifying that's before he won for Dune. That was his only Oscar, which is still really weird to think about. But the point being, that score
been his only Oscar, because Dune was.
It's funny. I haven't even seen Dune Part 2. I suppose I need to now that Denis is going to be directing a Bond movie. But anyway, my point.
Chalamet is Bond.
That was one of my first thoughts as well, even though hopefully that won't happen. Point being, this score incorporates part of the Hans Zimmer score. And I was like, yeah, that is amazing. I really love that. And that was the only time I had that reaction to any of the music I was listening to, which kind of feels like part of the problem. Like, to me, the issue isn't these songs are just poor retreads of songs I already know, as much as the bar is pretty high for the songs in Disney movies. So I go into this one thinking, okay, I hope it's almost as good as something from The Lion King, the original one. And then there's the added part of, I hope it's as good as other Lin-Manuel Miranda songs. And that's the thing, that's the challenge. Because another piece of this that I wanted to acknowledge here, another movie I assume we all saw in theaters a month before Mufasa the Lion King was Moana 2, which, again, a movie that Scott and I will talk about at some point on this show. Also a film with songs that are definitely, they exist, the songs in that movie. And pointedly, they were not written by Lin-Manuel Miranda because he was working on the songs for this film. And when you hear the songs in Moana 2, one of my reactions was, yeah, it's not really easy to impersonate his style automatically. Like, you can try, but you are probably going to fail. And as I was listening to the songs in this movie again, I was thinking, well, this definitely sounds like something the guy who wrote Hamilton wrote, but not in a way that made me think, yeah, this is good. Because I know, Odie, you said your review, you said the songs range from meh to extremely catchy. There's one song in this, I would say, that is catchy to some extent. And that, like the rest of them, I think it's not that the songs are bad. I think the songs are pretty forgettable, which is almost worse than bad. They're not terrible, but they're literally, guys, I listened to these songs 4 hours ago. I can barely remember any of the tunes of any of them, which seems hard to envision. Even if if I don't think the movie is very good, which I don't, the songs, I agree that they facilitate storytelling, but I don't know, like, put it this way. It's hard to envision somebody telling me there's going to be a new movie with a song performed by Princess Tiana and Dr. Facilier from The Princess and the Frog, Anika Noni Rose and Keith David. People who know the old show know I love The Princess and the Frog. And these are two of the finest performers you can get to be in any movie. Anika Noni Rose is excellent. Keith David is a badass, obviously. And they're going to sing a new song, and it's written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're not going to remember a goddamn part of it 30 minutes after you listen to it. That's the part. It's like, how is that possible? None of the songs here are like actively bad. I'm looking at some of these titles and I'm thinking, I know I heard this song today. I know I did, and I couldn't tell you a single bit of it, which that to me, like, again, the songs are better incorporated. I agree that they facilitate the storytelling better, which speaks to how effective Lin-Manuel Miranda is as a songwriter. But you said Bruno before the Go for Encanto. Yeah, that's a song that 4 years later, I don't even need to think about. I can hum that song. This one, I got nothing on this. And it's kind of a bummer in that way, I would say.
Well, in the defense of Mr. Miranda, I pulled up my Moana 2 review, and there's a line that I said that Can I Get a Chiho? The song that is the equivalent of You're Welcome, which is a song that should have been submitted for Academy consideration, just like Bruno wasn't.
Right.
I said it was the worst song from a Disney movie since Bette Midler sang Perfect Isn't Easy in Oliver and Company.
Wow.
So that was a little really, really through the crates comment that I put in that probably 2 people got, and those 2 people were probably you two.
Yep. I appreciate that reference.
The songs here are nowhere near as bad as the songs in Moana 2.
Correct. I mean, honestly, it's kind of like, Odie, what you were saying before. Like, I will happily say this movie is not as bad as the Lion King remake from 2019, which is a really low bar to clear. And these songs are definitely not as bad as the songs in Moana 2. But again, low bar, because those songs are absolutely horrible.
Right. But what you said a few minutes ago about how that's actually worse, because to be honest with you, I can still hear Can I Get a Chihu in my head because it was so bad. Whereas I actually did my homework and I watched Mufasa the Lion King over again. So I got all the songs in context, and with the exception of a couple of them that we'll talk about, I agree with you. Like I did musical theater, so I should be able to remember the lyrics to a song whether I liked it or not. And I mean, hopefully I don't draw a blank when you start listing these songs. And which one is that?
Well, we'll see. So yes, let's go through it track by track. So for people who haven't seen the movie, it's on Disney Plus, or maybe have forgotten about it. Again, the basic framework of this film is that it's the Godfather Part 2 version of The Lion King, because part of the movie, the framing is that Rafiki is telling the story of how Mufasa grew up and how he became the king of Pride Rock. He is telling that story to Kiara, Simba and Nala's daughter. And while Simba and Nala are off looking for a place for Nala to give birth to Kiara's soon-to-be baby sibling, Timon and Pumbaa are there. The aforementioned Timon and Pumbaa, voiced once again by Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner, are there. They are mostly there to be, they're your Statler and Waldorf. They're your, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, however you want to compare them. And I will only tell you, so I know, Odie, you said you found those characters annoying, I assume, originally when they were voiced by Nathan Lane and Ernie Sabella in the animated.
Actually, people who are better at voicing them than the 2 people you just mentioned. Yeah, still I mean, annoying.
So here's what I would say. What I enjoyed about them in this movie, my recollection of it, and again, sadly, kudos to you for doing your full homework, Odie. Scott, I don't know if you rewatched the film again.
I did.
See, I love how this time the tables have been turned. I was like, no, I can't. I can't do it to myself. You did it. Okay. What I remember from seeing it in theaters, and you both have seen it more recently, you can confirm if I'm right. Rogen and Eichner do lots of bits. Lots and lots and lots and lots of bits. That's basically all that they're there for. And everybody else is so annoyed at how they won't stop being jokey, which I just thought was really funny, because it's like, they're actually offering levity in the middle of this relatively dour story. I'll take their humor as much as I can get it.
Well, I said that they were there to remind people that your kids are watching this movie. So they're for the kids.
Yes.
And everything else is basically like, the more for the parents who are watching this than the kids because some of it is actually quite traumatic. But then again, so was The Lion King.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, and that's the thing is they existed in the original movie to be the comic relief in a very heavy story too, and that's.
Yep.
But the funny thing about saying that they're here to remind you that the kids are watching, they're also here to remind you that you were a kid when you were watching because they're making jokes about how Hakuna Matata was ubiquitous and
Yep.
that kind of thing. So they're
when they're saying Hakuna Mufasa, I was like, get the hell out of this movie.
Well, I think so. The reason why I mentioned it is my recollection was I kind of enjoyed their humor, but also it feels so strongly at odds with the rest of the story in a way where it's like, you guys didn't even have to bring them back. You didn't have to have Timon and Pumbaa in this movie. Why include them if they're there to drive everybody crazy? But anyway, toys. So the point being, the whole framing is Rafiki is going to tell this story to Kiara. Timon and Pumbaa are basically learning it as well. And when the once upon a time aspect of the story begins, Mufasa and his parents, Masego and Afia, voiced by the aforementioned Keith David and Anika Noni Rose, are searching for a mythical place called Malele. And that, of course, is the name of that first true song within the film. As mentioned, performed by Anika Noni Rose and Keith David. Great actors, great voices. The song it's okay, I guess. It's fine. I mean, it was mostly I like they have a nice harmony together. I enjoy hearing the two of them duet, partly because, again, I'm a big enough fan of The Princess and the Frog that I have seen those actors in a very different, I've heard their voices rather, in a very different context for Disney. But I also don't think I can sit here and tell you that any of that song, even if I look for what's the comparison, there are certain songs in this film that we're going to talk about later that feel like, oh, this is this movie's version of I Just Can't Wait to Be King.
Right.
This is this movie's version of Be Prepared. I don't know that this really feels like it has a corollary, which isn't a bad thing. But
I'm
it didn't stand
disagree.
out.
I disagree
Okay.
too, but go ahead.
Go for it.
Well,
Go for it.
My disagreement is that this is a corollary to a song that's not in the Lion King movie, but is in the Lion King musical because it's He Lives in You.
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough.
And which is, of course, not something that anyone who is not familiar with a Lion King musical is going to think of, but that is a potential drawback for any of these. And I think this is sort of a standard challenge facing the musical sequels to animated musicals, which is they do that thing, the formula that exists thanks to, Macon and Ashman in terms of the kinds of songs you generally find in these animated musicals. And so they're often following that recipe, that formula, but there are very specific analogs to Lion King songs, as you mentioned, but it is odd that this one is an analog to a song that people would not know if they only knew the Lion King film.
Mm.
Right.
That's fair.
I agree, and I think that people that don't know the Lion King musical will try to associate this with Circle of Life,
which is the Nagons, which is the Li Boem song, which is that's clearly the Circle of Life version because it appears in the same context.
Yes.
I mean, so a very good point. It's funny. I've seen the Broadway show a couple of times, and I know He Lives in You, but it's one of those where I think in my lizard brain, it's like, this is the movie. I'm not going to think about the stage show in part because I know that this movie is not directly incorporated any of those songs from the stage show here. So, but that's a very fair point. I mean, but that aside, what do the two of you think of Malele?
Well, I think musically it's more memorable than the lyrics of the song that we get. And again, you're right. Anika Noni Rose and Keith David know how to sing a song. I mean, she was in the Dreamgirls movie, and Keith David is Keith David. So it just like you said. I think the expectation, at least for me, when they started to sing, my expectation really went up because again, we got, like you said, you have Dr. Facilier and Tiana singing a song, and it just didn't, it served its purpose to kind of set the stage for, it's almost like the movies I want song, not the characters I want song. And that the movie is saying, we want everybody to get this mythical place, Malele, that's, which means forever, apparently, according to, I'm not so sure about people's Swahili translations or anything like that, but I'll take their word for it. it just, to me, I think my expectation was a little bit too high. Musically, though, I thought it was rather interesting. More musically than lyrically, which sometimes happens with some of these songs. You get a really good kind of musical background that syncs up with the animation and so on, but the lyrics are kind of like just there.
I mean, I pretty much am in lockstep. I like it musically. I don't necessarily like it lyrically, but I'm sort of going to present what I think is the overarching problem with these, with the live, quote unquote, CGI live or, photorealistic animals doing this, which is it's not visually interesting, and it has to matter. That has to, we've talked about this as we've gone through our journey in many of these other animated films, and that is the context in which they appear. Do you remember Friend Like Me because it's the great song Friend Like Me? Do you remember it because of the way Robin Williams performs it? Do you remember it because of the animation that accompanies it? And all of those things go together, yes, as they're of a piece. And however successful these songs are on their own as songs, whether that's musically, lyrically, or in the performance of the singer, they are hampered by the fact that they are in an uninteresting visual context. And that just dampens their effectiveness. This is a solid sort of place setter. It is, this is sort of what we're going to be, striving towards, this wonderful, as of course, as it unfolds in the end, this wonderful multicultural society where everyone has each other's back. Again, nice idea, but this is the problem with this format, is it just doesn't allow for the kind of energy visually that helps make them even more memorable, or could.
Right. And again, I think the lions look a little more character, show a little more personality in their faces. But again, there's two problems. One, it's a lion, so there's only so many things you can do with their face if you're going to go for this quote unquote photorealistic nonsense. And then two, some of the beauty of animation, hand-drawn animation, or even some of the CGI animation that's not photorealistic, is that you can look at the character and see the actor. They talk about people watching the people in the booth, and then the animator sneakily adding in like some of their facial expressions as they're singing or doing the voice. And you really can only do so much of that. You can see Mads Mikkelsen in that, his character, the lion, the curious, the bad guy in this movie. You can see enough of him to kind of get that it's Mads Mikkelsen, but that's pretty much it. Yeah. I don't think any other lion looks a bit like any of the other characters. You have some expressive people in this movie, face-wise, and you cannot project that on the lion. So I agree with you that, drawing a hand drawing, people keep forgetting this, and I don't understand why. The beauty of animation is that you can do things with it that you can't do for real. Yeah. So why do they keep going in this direction? I do not need a lion, to start singing songs to me. All he has to do is sit in a circle at MGM and roar.
Yeah. I think my reference in my review of the 2019 Lion King was that these performances, visual performances, had all the personality of one of those novelty fish that flapped its jaws saying, "Don't worry, be happy." It's like you don't have any actual personality in the faces. It's just a jaw moving and words coming out of it.
Mr. Ed has more personality.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to Google Mr. Ed and Big Mouth Billy Bass, because that's what Scott was referencing. And by the way, the only thing I'm going to add here, this is Scott can roll his eyes at me. It's a computer animated movie. We don't need to fall into Disney's PR campaign and say live action or CG photorealistic. It's computer animation. That's what it is. And it's bad computer animation. I think we can all agree on that. I remember getting viscerally mad leading up to the 2019 remake when it definitely was neither of you guys, there were other writers saying, well, I could see why they don't want to call it computer animation because it's really photorealistic. And it's it's done in a computer, right? And it's animated. That's it. That's all it is. That's anytime I see on Blue Sky now, what kind of pop culture hill will you refuse to die? Will you die on? That's the one for me. Lion King's an animated remake. It's different when you talk about Lilo and Stitch, which is obviously mostly live action with a few obvious differences. But yes, that's my bugaboo, clearly. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I mean, I say it as, like snarky when I say it's photorealistic, but I also add that it's animated. So I don't just say it's photorealistic. I actually say that it's an animated thing, and it looks like photorealistic. It's almost, and you think about AI, even though this is not AI, but it's kind of a similar premise.
Yeah.
I'm going to take something, here's a lion, and I'm going to do something to it, and now it's going to start singing, but it's not going to ever look natural. Because again, lion, I mean, look at Timon and Pumbaa. Mm-hmm. They have a little more personality in their faces because, number one, they have bigger faces, or they have more flexibility in their faces. They still, look like crap. But if we're going to talk about between the lions and something, or even, Rafiki, he's a monkey, or he's a mandrill, as he keeps constantly reminding us in this movie. There's more, you can do more with his face than with a lion's face. But yeah, I still, who is this for? I always ask this question, and readers get angry with me. Like I'm supposed to know the answer to this question, but if I'm asking, I obviously don't know. Who is this for?
I know the answer to that question. For Disney's investors, that's who this is for. That's who they're thinking about most of all. But anyway, and by the way, the AI comparison I think is really spot on, and it just makes me think about the most recent episode of John Oliver's show. Speaking of somebody from the Lion King remake, he talked about AI slop. People should check that out. And by the way, I do think it's very funny that they got a good amount of the cast of the original film back, even for small roles, not just Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner, John Connie as Rafiki. Beyonce's back in it briefly. You've got Donald Glover, but John Oliver, no thanks. I just thought that's funny. I approve of that message. So after the song Mullally, pretty much right after that song, as I recall, we go from wonderful to tragic because there is a flood that sweeps Mufasa away from his parents, and he lands in this wetland where he's obviously never been. He meets Taka, a cub whose parents are king and queen of their pride. There's Queen Eshe, voiced by Tandy Newton, King Obasi, voiced by Lenny James. Eshe is welcoming to young Mufasa. Obasi is not. He tries to have the two of them race to see whether or not Mufasa can actually join the pride. And Taka throws the race because, he always wanted a brother. And that, of course, leads us to the next song, I Always Wanted a Brother. I mentioned catchy before. This is the catchy song. This is the one song of these that I thought, yes, this is memorable, relatively speaking, partially because, similar to We Don't Talk About Bruno, this song does something that helps it be catchy, which is it keeps repeating itself so much. And I would also say, I don't know if it's that the actors playing young Taka and young Mufasa, Braylon Rankins and Theo Samalu, if they were directed as this way. But as I was hearing the two of them, especially more so than when Aaron Pierre and Kelvin Harrison Jr. as the grown-up versions of these characters, when they kind of take over in the back half of the song, with the younger actors specifically, I was listening to it and thinking, do you think they were told to mimic Lin-Manuel Miranda and Leslie Odom Jr. from Hamilton, or that they just felt like they should, like they had a very similar quality to their voices and how they were hitting certain notes that felt very similar to me? And that may just be me being unfair and thinking about Hamilton, which I've heard a billion times, both because I like it and my older son likes it, but it felt very similar there, which isn't automatically a bad thing. But again, when you're comparing it to Hamilton, which is, like it or not, a massively popular show and a big worldwide phenomenon, you're comparing it to a high bar. So it's definitely catchy. It moves well. It's got a good pace to it. As we've talked about before, it facilitates the story. I don't know if it's catchy good or just catchy. What do the two of you think of I Always Wanted a Brother?
I thought it was I Just Can't Wait to Be King.
Right. Absolutely.
Knockoff.
Yes.
It does work because Lin-Manuel Miranda does that thing he does in a lot of songs where the repetition actually does work. You repeat something and it's catchy enough, it'll start getting stuck in your head, which is, I think, what drives a lot of people crazy because they feel that it's lazy. Just to keep we're rhyming, brother with brother. I think there's method to his madness. I think it works here, especially in the early part of the song, which I think is more successful in the later part when the adults take over, because there's a playfulness to the song. And, I'm the oldest and I always wanted a brother and I got 3 of them. So be careful what you wish for, Taka. But it's a playful song and it works for kids. Like the kid part of it actually really does work, and it is catchy. The brother constantly being mentioned over and over again really does get it stuck in your head, because repetition, as Schoolhouse Rock taught us, actually does make you remember.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Josh, is maybe it's the Lin-Manuel Miranda-esque song of these songs.
Yes.
I think there's one more that's probably more than that, but we'll get to that.
Okay. I mean, I think I know where you're going, because I think there's the call and response part is something that's very typical. And so if I'm anticipating where you're going, there's another song that goes the call and response route in a different way too. But I think there's a lot of this that feels, and to me, it's the most energetic, it's the most fun, and it's the song that I can, hum. I mean, I've watched this, a week and a half or so ago, and this is the one that is still in my head. And it's a song that I think absolutely works in context, and really just works as a song, because I think it's something that it's him finding, Lin-Manuel finding his groove and executing it extremely well.
Again, it's definitely, I think when this song played initially, when I was, saw it in December, I was like, okay, if the other songs are going to be in this vein, I can live with that. So after that song, again, Mufasa and Taka are grown up, and although Obasi wants Taka to kind of be separate from Mufasa, they have this bond. They can't really, they're friendly with each other. They're brotherly, even if it's not, by blood. And one day, Eshe is teaching Mufasa how to hunt. And as they're doing that, a couple of white lions attack them. Mufasa kills one. The other one goes back and tells the leader of the Outsiders, the aforementioned Kiros, voiced by Mads Mikkelsen. They are outcast because of the color of their fur. And Kiros is looking for vengeance because his son was the lion who got killed by Mufasa. He attacks Obasi's pride. Obasi, he's gone. Eshe, they're gone. It's really just Mufasa and Taka who escape. And as I recall, since you both saw it more recently, this is the scene in which the next song appears, and that would be Bye Bye. Sung by Mads Mikkelsen. And listen, since he played Hannibal Lecter, since he played Lashif, I don't want to say too much to cross Mads Mikkelsen, who I'm sure is a dedicated listener of the show. Mads Mikkelsen has many talents. I know from another round that one of his talents is dancing. I am not so sure that singing is one of his talents. And that said, what I would also say, I mentioned before, Lin-Manuel Miranda knows Disney songs very well. He is able to create his own work that fits within that broader discography. I already said as much. Shiny is a great song. Shiny is way better than I think some people remember. He knows how to write a good villain song, and he did write a villain song here. I don't think this is a particularly good one. And part of it is that Mads Mikkelsen, he's doing a little bit more of the Rex Harrison singing style, which isn't automatically a bad thing. But when I think about, okay, Be Prepared, performed mostly, but not entirely by Jeremy Irons. If you go back and listen, kids, Jim Cummings had to sing the final verse of that because Jeremy Irons got sick, apparently. That has always seemed very weird to me, but apparently that's what happened. Point being, Be Prepared is a great villain song, and Bye Bye, unfortunately, to me, comes up short. I admire the attempt. I don't really think it works very well. What do the two of you think?
Well, I I thought this is the best song in the movie. And I
Really?
think it's also a troll. In my review, I say, in fact, I compare this song in my review to Shiny.
Okay.
It's a song that I think is a fantastic, I mean, not that in quality, but I just think that people's divisive reaction to Shiny, which shouldn't have been divisive at all, in my opinion, would follow with this Bye Bye. But I feel like he's doing the Brian De Palma thing here. He's like, so you didn't like the song that I wrote that was obnoxiously catchy. I'm going to give you this one, where basically he uses Bye Bye, a common phrase that we all use, to troll you by having Mads Mikkelsen sing it repeatedly over and over and over again for what seems like kind of no reason whatsoever, except the fact that it's Bye Bye and it fits into the lyric. But I thought this was his petty song, and that's why I thought it was the best song in the movie. I thought it was fun because it was Lin-Manuel Miranda clearly being petty, as a good Broadway songwriter should be at one point or another. And Nicholson is fine. I mean, I don't think Jeremy Irons, number one, Be Prepared is a much better song and a much more sinister song. And Jeremy Irons is able to convey that, at least in the two stanzas that he does sing in the song, to convey a kind of droll, almost Klaus von Bülow kind of, number. In fact, he even says, "You have no idea" in The Lion King.
Yes.
A clear reversal of fortune reference. So I think he has something to go on because he's playing basically, Scar as Klaus von Bülow. Whereas Mads Mikkelsen doesn't have a prerequisite except to kind of make you think about Scar, which of course wouldn't make sense in the context of this movie because, well, Scar is in it. So, I mean, this is the song that kind of caught me that I thought was the best song. I mean, the other song, You Always Wanted a Brother, is, in my opinion, these are the two best songs in the movie. But this one struck me as, I see what you're doing. Now, I remember The Little Mermaid had that horrible rap song, The Scuttlebutt. And I mentioned this in my review. I said, either you're going to love it or you're going to hate it, but it's going to get stuck in your head whether you like it or not. So this, again, is Lin-Manuel Miranda using his ability to get things stuck in your head for evil. But I appreciated it this time.
Oh wow, that's thorny. You have given me much to ponder there. I am not a fan, and so we've talked. I mean, whether in the context even of not just of the musicals, I think that just the larger conversation about the Disney movies and their lack of villains. That there was just sort of a stretch for years where it felt like that they just refused to give us a villain, and thereby give us a really good villain song. And so. I mean, and honestly, even Shiny, while it is nominally a villain song, that villain is not a significant part of that movie. I mean, that's a pretty minor character. It's just someone who shows up to throw a monkey wrench into the plan briefly. So it's great the idea of having it. I hate the title. I think it is stupid as shit. I just cannot get over the fact that I'm just annoyed by it lyrically, and with the point of comparison obviously being Be Prepared, and I have to return to the idea. One of the things that makes Be Prepared as a number work is that imagery of the goose stepping, vicious, that's sort of that bringing that whole thing into it, and there's no comparable here to actually help make that kind of to give that atmosphere of foreboding and menace. Yeah, exactly. So, the performance, again, it does what he can with what it is. I find it an underwhelming opportunity for what a villain song can be. It's just really that's how you're going to be threatening to me, is by telling me you're going to. It's like you're some kind of terrible bad wrestling heel where it's like this is your catchphrase. I'm going to make you go bye bye. That's the best you can do.
Exactly. So let me throw a wrench into this about villains, because I mentioned in my review that finally we get a nice flesh and blood villain for Disney to dispatch. Let's go back a movie to Wish. This is a much worse movie than this, in my opinion.
Which we've already talked about. Yes.
Yes,
You have the villain song. So since you talked about it, I'm going to bring it back up again. The villain song in that movie. What do you think about that compared to Bye Bye? And in terms of not quality of the song, but how it works or how it doesn't work. Because the villain song in Wish, I mean, we got a flesh and blood villain in Wish, but of course they kind of don't need to do much with that. But the song itself that is in that movie is kind of, that's what I was thinking about a little bit when I was watching, this again this morning. What did you, by comparison, do you think that song worked better than Bye Bye?
Ooh, that's a great question, because I don't think it's necessarily as good a song in some ways, but Wish is so bad in so many other. It's comparing mushy apples to mushy oranges, really.
Okay.
I mean,
I just thought I would be devil's advocate and play the bad guy here.
That's okay. It's a good question. I mean, for my part, like, as I recall, I'm sure when we talked with Louis Peitzman about that film a few weeks back, and I'm sure we talked about that song. There's a repeated vamp, a musical vamp in that song that I enjoy. The rest of it is pretty blah. And I think the way that I put it in my Letterboxd review at the time was, I have been champing at the bit for Disney to make an animated film with a unquestionable, unadulterated bad guy who gets their own song, and Wish gave me that. And I'm going to say something I think, Odie, you already said today on the show. Be careful what you wish for. It's like, I got what I wanted and I don't like it. I think the only difference is Chris Pine, as I recall, is definitely throwing every inch and ounce of his personality into that song. And Mads Mikkelsen is a very menacing performer. So, like, I get conceptually why they'd want to cast him as the bad guy here. But I almost, like, you don't know as much about the character at this point of the film. So it's like, I can tell from your voice that you're the bad guy, but also this doesn't really have the same impact, I would say.
Well, now that you bring that up, I actually kind of do agree. It is a little bit too early in the song because, we don't know anything about these white lions except that they're, menacing, that they're coming to kill other lions. We don't really know. By the time you get to be prepared, you have a pretty good idea of who Scar is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's it. So bye-bye happens. Mufasa and Taka escape. And once they have finally reached land again, they encounter a young version of Sarabi, Zazu, and Rafiki. Rafiki is looking for Malele, and, obviously Mufasa, who knows that well from what his parents have told him, wants to follow. They all go together. And it's fitting that the next song is called We Go Together. That was an unintentional reference. I actually didn't mean to say it that way, but I did. As they're going on this trek, we learned that, of course, somebody is having romantic feelings for Sarabi, but twist, it's Taka who has feelings for Sarabi. As they're making this trek to Malele, they run afoul of the outsiders again. There is a bit of action with an elephant stampede, and although Mufasa saves Sarabi, he lies and says that it was actually Taka who did it because he knows that Taka has feelings for Sarabi. At some point around this, I don't know if it's before or after the snowbound sequence, the next song comes into play. We Go Together. And first of all, isn't that a name of a song from Greece?
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
I was a little surprised that they didn't say like Lama Lama Lama.
Right? Because when I went back to re-listen to the songs today, I had remembered, even if I didn't remember the names of Malele, I Always Wanted a Brother at Bye Bye. I remembered those songs, generally speaking. I'd forgotten about this song, and I was looking at the track listing on Wikipedia, and I was like, well, that's wrong. It can't actually be called We Go Together, because A, it's a song from Greece, B, it's a famous song from Greece, and C, you kind of assume Lin-Manuel Miranda would know that it's a famous song from Greece. But yeah, so this is a group song. They all perform. And when I said before, these songs are forgettable, again, literally it's been 4-something hours since I listened to this song. I have no recollection of any of how this song goes. So it's not bad, I guess, but it's like here, the one thing I put in my notes, it moves like it's a fast-paced song. These are not songs that feel like they're moving slowly or turgid pacing or anything like that. It moves well, but this is not an earworm of a song for me. And it just, for the two of you heard it in context. Odie, you much more recently than Scott did, but still, what do the two of you think of this one? Because I have almost nothing.
Well, I heard it an hour ago and I don't remember it. I just finished watching The Lion just before I got on this with you. Sometimes hearing something out of context, and this happens with Broadway soundtracks and everything, kind of takes something away from the song.
Sure.
I don't think the fast pace of it is because of what's happening in the movie, the animation of it, and what they're doing. But at the same time, like you said earlier, it has to serve a purpose of moving the story along, but also being enough where you actually go with the song, even at least try to remember a lyric from it, because I'm racking my brain right now, and honest to God, I don't remember I don't even remember they sing We Go Together and the chorus of it. And then, again, I just watched it an hour ago. And granted, I'm getting old and my senior moments are becoming more frequent, but I just watched this an hour ago and I couldn't remember a single thing about it. Or even in the context, you said, is it before or after the big snow scene? I didn't even remember when you asked that question. So yeah, this is, Sorry, Lin-Manuel Miranda. But I have a question. I'm confused about something. The Randy Newman's second Oscar, wasn't that song called "We Go Together"?
Oh, we belong
We
together.
belong together.
Okay, thank you.
Very close.
My brain was like, oh no, wait, isn't this the Randy Newman song too? Sorry.
I was saying, go ahead, Scott.
I don't remember that one either, by the way.
There's a funny bit where when we're sitting here, I will often pull up the lyrics, and at Genius Lyrics, I'm looking at the lyrics to "We Go Together" because again, I can't remember any either. Over on the little tab next to it, you might also like "We Go Together" from Grease. It's right there.
Not even the same. It's not even close.
You like songs with this title, apparently. That's
funny.
If you don't like, we don't talk about Bruno. I think you'll love "Precious Lord, Take My Hand." I mean, just what it's like. So I'm sorry, guys. I don't remember a damn thing about this.
I mean, I think we're all in the same boat. I think even when I looked, I'm sitting here looking at my notes, and it's like I thought, "We Go Together." No, that's a different song. That's the "We Belong Together." And yeah, there's nothing. It's functional, and that's about as much as I can say because I couldn't. Again, I had to bring up the lyrics to go, "What is it?" So if you want to go fast, go alone. I can't. Usually, if I have a problem with with kind of recalling a song, seeing the lyrics will do it.
Yes.
Right? Not helping. Not helping at all.
So I don't feel bad now.
No.
I mean, it's honestly, that's why when I said at the outset here that the songs being forgettable is almost where it's like, you just think to ourselves, Lin-Manuel Miranda writing a song that is forgettable just seems hard to envision. Because like when Odie mentioned Vivo earlier, now I don't remember the songs well enough to know if they are as bad as you said, but I remember the songs well enough because when that came out on Netflix, my older son was 7, I think the perfect age for that movie. And there was like a 3-week period where the only thing that we were watching in our house was Vivo. And it was like, I would like to tell Lin-Manuel Miranda some harsh words right now. They're not very, like, I got some things to say to you, but point being, those songs stuck. These songs not sticking is kind of wild. So after that song, after We Go Together, which is a song that they sing, we learn, they get to that snowy mountain range that Rafiki has guided them to. And although Zazu is trying to cover their tracks, it turns out that Taka, he is so jealous about Mufasa, especially since he now knows that Sarabi and Mufasa have mutual feelings for each other, and Taka is the odd man out, the odd lion out. He meets up with Kiros and the other outsiders. He wants revenge on Mufasa. Kiros wants revenge on Mufasa for his son's death. So if Taka kind of guides them the right way, Kiros will let him join the Pride. Taka is giving them, he's doing like Hansel and Gretel with leaving like breadcrumbs or little candy pieces behind. And around this time, I think around the period of when Sarabi and Mufasa fall in love, we get the next song, Tell Me It's You, which here's the fun fact. Now, Odie, you mentioned before that when Moana had a song shortlisted for the Academy Awards, it wasn't You're Welcome. I agree. It should have been. I like How Far I'll Go, but I think that if You're Welcome gets nominated,
right.
if You're Welcome gets nominated, does City of Stars win the Oscar? Who knows? And listen, no. I like La La Land, but also that's one of those where I think, Moana should have won Best Original Song. Not just so that Lin-Manuel Miranda could get his EGOT, which I still think he is in search of, if memory serves correctly. Because, although Tell Me...
than We Go Together.
Well, because although Tell Me... So here's the reason why I mentioned it. Tell Me It's You is the only song from this film that was shortlisted in the category of Best Original Song. It did not receive a nomination. Now, it's a perfectly fine love duet ballad. My big takeaway was, Tiffany Boone has a really, really nice voice, a very polished, very solid singing voice. Aaron Pierre has an okay singing voice. When I saw his name this morning, I was thinking to myself, I really need to watch Rebel Ridge, because that's the movie that he starred in that Jeremy Saulnier directed for Netflix, and I really love Jeremy Saulnier's other films. I haven't seen that yet, but
and he's in the Underground Railroad also.
That's
He's
true.
in the
Yes,
underground era as well.
the Barry Jenkins TV show from Amazon. That again, speaking of things that people did not see, sadly, his voice is okay, but Tiffany Boone's voice really stood out to me in this song. I really liked her performance, and at the same time, I can't tell you how the song goes, but I liked her voice at least. What do the two of you think of "Tell Me It's You"?
I liked her voice too, and she had done some Tyler Perry movies, and then not to throw Tyler Perry into this mix here, Tyler Perry movies fail, not just because Tyler Perry can't direct them, but also because a lot of his original plays were actually musicals. And they take all the musical numbers out. People don't realize this unless you have a mother like mine who is a Tyler Perry addict and will have seen all these things on stage. He writes a fairly good song, Tyler Perry, but they take them all out of the movie. And I would have known that Tiffany Boone had a great voice because she's in a couple of the Tyler Perry movies, if he had allowed her to sing. So this is a very big surprise to me that she's able to kind of carry the song, the romantic element of the song, whereas Aaron Pierre, who isn't bad, it's just I don't think he gets lyrics that are, and again, these aren't memorable lyrics, but lyrics that serve the song as well as her voice, her performance. Well, basically, she sells the song. I guess I'll put it that way. She sells the song better than he does.
But I'm guessing that this is one of the songs you're referring to that had that sort of Lin-Manuel Miranda thing.
Well, I never thought he was especially good at writing love songs. I mean, even in Hamilton, I don't think he's terrible at it. I just think his forte is more of the da 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 kind of song. You know, the big song, the big brassy, what you expect from a Broadway musical song. And these kind of quieter songs of his, they work, but they don't work as well as his big numbers. You know,
I think that's fair, although That Would Be Enough is a song that I think is actually probably the closest in his other, oeuvre to this, and I think this is where I hear that. One of the things I don't think we've actually talked about enough is that one of the things that I think Lin-Manuel Miranda can do really well is write to voices that don't have a great range, since he's one of those people. He's a perfectly fine singer, but he's not a Broadway belter, and so his ability to write for a Mads Mikkelsen, to write for actors who are primarily actors and not primarily singers, is a great skill to have. But it also can lend itself to things that, if within the context they're not sort of engrossing, they don't have that that show tune quality that I think some people are thinking of. It's not Idina Menzel, belting out "Let It Go." It's not going to have that quality to it. That's just not the way he generally writes his songs. But I think this is actually, it's a nice song, and it feels very, very much a Lin-Manuel song, and that sort of I push you away, don't push me away, and I don't know what to say, you know what to say, and so there's that thing all works. And honestly, I've really never liked "Can You Feel the Love Tonight." I would take this.
I was gonna mention that.
I would take this.
First of all, it's Oscar fraud, because the song that won was not the song that was in the movie. They're completely different lyrics that Elton John sings. Can You Feel the Love Tonight? It's the worst song in the line. It's absolutely terrible lyrically. This is a much better song, love song, if we're going to go there, than the Can You Feel the Love Tonight. This is kind of the equivalent of that in this movie, if you think about it. But Can You Feel the Love Tonight? It's got, Timon and Pumbaa saying, it's like, let's have the third wheels come in and sing with this romantic song in the movie. And then the one that won the Oscar is when you hear over the end credits. So I didn't know that this was the one song that was submitted for Oscar consideration. Once again, they're doing the wrong thing for Lin-Manuel Miranda. They should have submitted.
Doing him dirty.
They should have submitted bye-bye.
Well, and here's the thing. The one thing that maybe less so with the songs of this film, but certainly was true of Moana. I remember at the time when they said, we submitted How Far I'll Go, and I remember it being like, is there a limit on you guys only submitting one? Like, we all remember the era of the 90s when it felt like all of the songs in the category.
There were 3 songs from Beauty and the Beast.
Yes, right, yes.
It's like, why would you not submit more than one? Like, yes, How Far I'll Go is a great song, but it's not the only good song in that film.
We know that they can submit more than one song because there was more than one song from the movie that won.
That's correct.
Yes, that is sadly true. So I was going to note, Although Tell Me It's You did not get the nomination, the nominees last year were, I need to start the most logical place. Scott will appreciate. I'm, of course, referring to the Diane Warren song.
Diane Warren song.
Yes. This is, our listeners know we have been talking a lot about Diane Warren on the show lately, even though she hasn't written any of these songs. The song she wrote was The Journey for the Netflix film The 688. There was Like a Bird from
a Tyler Perry song, a Tyler Perry movie.
There was Like a Bird from Sing Sing, Never Too Late from Elton John, Never Too Late. And then, yes, there were two songs from Emilia Perez. There was Mi Camino and the winning song El Mal. And all I can say about the songs of Emilia Perez, maybe one of you or both of you sat through the entire movie. I watched about 50 minutes and I thought, nope, this is not for me. This is not my bag. So I don't know. Is El Mal in the first 50 minutes? Is El Mal in the first 50 minutes of the movie? Did I actually hear the song? I don't know.
Let me put it to you this way. It's the song where she's dancing around. I said that it was the R. Kelly song because I speak Spanish, so I try not to read the subtitles when I watch a movie that's in Spanish. They were too fast for me, so I had to read the subtitles. But that song, I could understand it without the subtitles. And it's basically what R. Kelly does. I always said he was the Philip Glass of R&B. Because he basically says the same thing over and over again, but not like Lin-Manuel Miranda does. He just basically just throws it out there, it's the same word over and over again. And that's what El Mal was. It was a list of things in Spanish. And if you didn't understand Spanish, it sounded catchy. It was da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I mean, over and over and over. But if you do understand Spanish, you're like, this is the dumbest song. This is like the ABCs. And no disrespect to the ABCs. I love the ABCs. Catchy song. But that's pretty much what it was. I said it was going to win, but none of those songs you mentioned were actually any good. Well, the Sing Sing song I thought was the best of the lot. The Diane Warren song, see, again, I'm a chaos agent. I wanted it to win just because she just got an Oscar, not because it was good, because it's not, but just because she got the Oscar. And I was like, this would be like her getting on stage. And after watching that documentary where every other word she said was fuck, I said, yeah, she's going to get on stage and cuss the Oscars out. And of course, she didn't win.
I feel like at this point, she's going to keep making these terrible songs until she wins. They need to fight like she's trying to wear the Oscars down. That's what it feels like.
So just give her a national competitive Oscar. But again, the best song the song she should have won for was the first song she wrote for a movie that wasn't even nominated, the Rhythm of the Night from The Last Dragon. That's the best movie song she wrote.
I don't think I knew she wrote that. Okay.
Yes, she wrote that. It's catchy. It's a great song. I just watched The Last Dragon. It turned 40 this year. And it's used in the movie, and it's catchy as hell. It's the best song she wrote for a movie, and she didn't get nominated for it.
It's a shame.
So this is the Oscars, the Oscars curse now is going to keep nominating for these terrible songs. And she's going to win for like the worst one. She's going to be, it's going to be this la 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 la. That's the whole song. La 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 la. She's going to win the Oscar.
Probably. So bringing it back to Mufasa, the one thing I was noting, by the way, Tiffany Boone, I had not, you mentioned, Odie, she's been in a couple of Tyler Perry films. I had not realized, I've seen her in a few films myself. She's in the YA fantasy movie Beautiful Creatures, starring Alden Ehrenreich. She was in the George Clooney Netflix film The Midnight Sky. The one that I think is particularly fun, and a weird little coincidence, she is on one episode of the Disney live action drama, whatever thing, Once Upon a Time, where she played a young version of Ursula, which I think that's a weird little coincidence. There is a season 4 episode fittingly titled Poor Unfortunate Soul, in which she played the young version of Ursula. The grown-up version was played by the actress Maren Dungy, who people may know from Alias. She's also been on The Chi. She was in the show Hunters. And I know for a fact I saw her last year in the Peacock miniseries The Big Cigar, because I reviewed that show. And I remember Audrey Holland, speaking of people who have been in Barry Jenkins movies, but I'd forgotten that she played the wife of Huey P. Newton, who Andre Holland played in that show. Anyway, so after that,
that's right. I forgot that.
It's been a year. It hasn't been that long, and I know I saw it. Yeah. But anyway, so after that song, they reach Malele, which of course will eventually be what we all know of as Pride Rock. There's one final song, Brother Betrayed, that Kelvin Harrison Jr. sings, and you guys saw the movie more recently than I did. Does it happen as he's debating whether or not to kill Mufasa, or before or after that?
It happens almost immediately after Tell Me It's You.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
literally,
It
there's
literally runs into it, yes.
he sees them from a distance, and then he basically breaks into that song. And the thing about it that I think is actually interesting is it calls to mind the ways in which an animated musical isn't like a Broadway musical in the sense of motifs, especially something like Hamilton, which is not entirely through song, but might as well be. And that you have so many songs, and something like Les Miserables, where there are a lot of songs which are basically, echo each other in some way. And so this one, beginning with, I love her, my brother, there's nothing we keep from each other, sort of echoes that, I always wanted a brother. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I would like to see more of that, but so, most animated musicals have, like this one, 5, 6, maybe 7 songs, and you can't really play with that in the same way. So I just think I was kind of enjoying the fact that it was doing that, a thing that these movies rarely have a chance to do. It's just, it basically is, it's almost entirely, this is a plot song. This is telling you, this is, Taka saying, here's what happens now. I did everything for you and you did it. Now here's where I'm going to do, it's all about that. So it's very, very functional, but I like the fact that it has that kind of motif structure that you don't usually get from the animated musicals.
I will agree completely with you on that. It's just an exposition song, if we can call it that, but it does have a callback, and a lot of, again, Miranda does try to do this in some of the other movies that they scored, because that's what you do in a Broadway musical, even in a musical. They're going to talk about musicals from the MGM era. They do have callbacks to some of the other things and some of the other, like, melodies, or, to remind you that this song is a companion piece to an earlier song. That's just musical theater 101. Mm-hmm. And so I agree with that. I appreciated that this attempted to do that and tried to mirror, or at least kind of, mirror is probably the best word I can use, the earlier song, whereas I always wanted a brother and now I got one. And as I said earlier, be careful what you wish for. This is kind of the be careful what I wish for song. And I got it, and now look what I have to do. But so it serves two functions. I think it's the more interesting thing is the callback, the motif function that it serves. The actual exposition part of it is kind of like, you could have just done this, buddy. You didn't have to sing a song about it.
Yes. And so after that, we get the climax where they're at Malele, so are Kiros and the Outsiders. There's a fight. At one point, wouldn't you know it, Taka gets himself a scar on his eye because he has a fight with Kiros. And then Mufasa, and this is where the stuff at the very end is the type of stuff that annoys me about any prequel, which is we all know that Scar and Mufasa are still going to be in Pride Rock when they're older. So even though Mufasa has every reason to say, hey, Taka, get the fuck out. I don't want you anywhere near me anymore. You tried to kill us. He says, you can stay, but I'm not going to call you by your name. And Taka says, don't worry. You don't have to call me by my name. I'll be Scar now. So I never forget. And you can tell he's saying it in a way that's, don't worry, I'll never forget how badly I want to kill you. And of course, that's what happens. And that's the movie. I will say, by the way, I was looking at this movie did not get a lot of awards love of any kind last year. But the thing that I was interested in, I noticed, at least on the Wikipedia page, the soundtrack got a couple of nominations here and there, but there was only one notable award that this movie won. It was at the NAACP Image Awards back in February. And when we talk about a absolutely huge mistake, and I realize the NAACP Image Awards may not be the equivalent of the Oscars, but I see any category where I think that's ridiculous. So the category is character voice performance in motion picture. The nominees are Lupita Nyong'o in The Wild Robot, Ayo Edebiri.
Which I would have picked as the winner, right?
Well, so Ayo Edebiri, Inside Out 2. And the final 3 nominees are all from Mufasa: Anika Noni Rose, Aaron Pierre, and Blue Ivy Carter. One of the 3 people I just named won that award. Which of them was it? Scott, do you have a guess?
Blue Ivy Carter.
I would guess the same thing, yeah.
And you are both correct. And of course, I would like to emphasize something. I agree with Odie. Lupita Nyong'o deserved every possible award. The Wild Robot was my favorite film of last year. Lupita Nyong'o's performance was incredible.
That vocal performance was Oscar worthy.
Absolutely.
I loved it too. Was in my top 10. And when I saw it at Toronto, I walked out going, "Oh my God, this woman! What does she do? How does she actually make that work?"
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's
one of at least 2 Oscars she should have by now.
Yes, but
yes,
wait, Blue Ivy Carter, and I don't mean to pick on Beyonce's kid. Sorry, Blue Ivy. It's not her fault. She has like 10 lines in the whole movie.
Yes. Well, and let's also note, as much as I love Anika Noni Rose, it's not like she has a ton to do in the movie either. So it's weird that she got nominated.
She gets a song.
She does. That is true. I'm just saying, if it was like Aaron Pierre, Tiffany Boone, Kelvin Harrison Jr., it'd be like, well, they all have a lot to do in the movie. Maybe I don't think they deserve to be nominated, but I get it. And yes, Blue Ivy Carter getting it, it's like, yes, because you want to make sure that Beyonce and Jay-Z will show up or something like that. But yes, it is ridiculous. The Wild Robot, by the way, if you haven't seen The Wild Robot, you need to see it. It's on Peacock.
Please,
and I will also point
and watch Flow also.
Well, and I was going to point out, speaking of Lupita Nyong'o and Disney, we're recording this on June 27th, and my hope, considering the recent mayoral primary in New York, is that people are now going to realize that Zoran Mamdani's mother is Mira Nair, which also hopefully means people are going to watch Queen of Katwe, which is a wildly underrated film, a great movie. Lupita Nyong'o is amazing in that film. Anytime
Oscar.
Yes. Well, but I was going to say, I don't know if Scott was going to go in the same direction. I agree that she deserves at least one, and it's for a movie my wife and I recently rewatched, which is Us.
One more. Yes.
Yeah, well, yes, I know she has the one for 12 Years a Slave. And she deserves that one. She should have gotten an Oscar for Us. Just anytime, like in my house, my wife always teases me if ever Lupita Nyong'o's name comes up, she's like, "Oh, you mean your biggest celebrity crush?" And I was like, "She's one of the greatest actresses living today." Forgive me for thinking she's great.
Well, if I can throw shade on the NAACP, because I can.
Okay. You get that card. You get to play that card
here. But so I just wrote a piece on Brokeback Mountain, which is up.
Sure.
And I was talking about how Crash won Best Picture at the Oscars.
It is. Yep.
Well, Crash also won Best Picture at the NAACP Image Awards.
Ooh.
But that's not the worst part of it. Green Book also won Best Picture at the NAACP Awards. So W.E.B. Du Bois is spinning in his grave. But you really can't take the NAACP Image Awards seriously, and
that's fair.
I'm not going to be able to invite us to any more cookouts after I said this publicly. But I stand by my statement. I mean, yeah, the NAACP does some good things. They don't give out good awards.
That's fair. And again, I think honestly one of the reasons why I wanted to mention it is, this movie came out at the Christmas time period, both to ensure that it could last in theaters for a while. And one thing that I regrettably must acknowledge, although this movie opened to not an amazing amount of money in its opening weekend, it actually ended up making like $725 million worldwide, which is certainly not as much as the Favreau remake, but a pretty reasonable amount of money. But one of the other reasons they released it at this time of year is to presumably emphasize the potential for awards. Because I know one thing that drives me crazy, that absolutely drove me crazy, when the ads for this movie came out, they obviously emphasized that it was from Barry Jenkins, who is this brilliant filmmaker, an Academy Award winner. And I forget exactly where, but another bugaboo of mine is typos in things that shouldn't have typos, like, say, a trailer that you're releasing around the world that says Academy Award winner Barry Jenkins and has the hyphen in the wrong place. Like, it had a hyphen in the wrong place. And I remember looking at it being like, you guys cannot possibly fuck that up. That's the easiest thing. And they fucked it up. But anyway, so I think that's it for Mufasa. Well, here, actually, before I do, Scott, I know, Odie, for your awareness, we sometimes talk about covers of songs that we discuss in the show. Since this movie is relatively recent, I don't know that there are a ton of covers, but I do know that earlier this week, Scott sent me an email with the subject, "I hate AI so much." Would you like to describe why you sent me that email, Scott?
So, yeah, I mean, as you're hinting at, because this is as new as it is, there aren't a lot of conventional, actual recorded covers. Obviously, YouTube is full of people doing their versions of various songs. Disney songs are very popular in that realm. But I managed to find someone who decided to create an AI version of Bye Bye as though it were sung by Pennywise the Clown from It.
Oh no.
And it is as grotesque as you can imagine just from that description. It is just appalling. And this is there are so many different reasons why people can think AI is the scourge of all existence. And this is something somebody just decided, let's do this. And then now it's there and I knew about it. And it's like, if I know about it, Josh, you're going to have to know about it too.
Oh yeah, that's love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no thanks for that.
I was going to do a remake of Bye Bye and sing it myself just for you guys, but now it looks like Pennywise the Clown is beating me to it. I do want to bring up one thing about Barry Jenkins, and since this movie came out at Christmas time, and looking at my review, my review ran December 20th, and I mentioned this in my review. Barry Jenkins had another movie the same time this movie came out, and I saw it at TIFF. The movie's called The Fire Inside, and it was written by him. And if we're going to talk about worthy Oscar nominees, the screenplay was good enough for an Oscar nominee. He didn't direct it. It was directed by cinematographer by Rachel Morrison, the cinematographer. But it was a very good movie. It was a damn good screenplay because it did what sports movies don't do. It actually showed you what happened after the big game. Mm-hmm. The second half of the movie is what happens after she wins the fight, which you don't normally ever see in a sports movie. That's usually the climax of the movie. And how he does that and gives you all the Barry Jenkins-y kind of things that you would get. And I start to wonder, when he was making this film, you talked about maybe he was making it because of Bill She Could Talk wasn't a hit. I'm starting to wonder if there's a Cassavetes type element to what he's doing, because remember, and a lot of people don't know this, Sorry Baby, which is fantastic, the movie that was coming out by Eva Victor, Barry Jenkins was the producer of that. He was the producer of Aftersun. The Charlotte Wells movies. He's been producing a lot of things behind the scenes. And I'm wondering if he's doing a one for me and one for them kind of thing with this particular film, so he can have enough money to produce these smaller films that he wanted to do. And I don't think he's not going on record saying this is what he's doing, but I was kind of wondering if that was the initial reason why he decided to spend 3 years of his life on a movie whose songs we just mentioned, we can't remember half of them.
I feel like that is just the landscape of the industry, and that if anyone wants to be able to do the kind of thing that you're describing that he's doing, you need to have your sellout moment. And you can use that term or not literally, but that's what it is. It's the I need money to be able to make things that are wonderful small projects, and if that means I have to spend 2.5 years of my life on this thing, then I guess I'm going to do that. And so I don't know how hard you can be on someone under these circumstances, under these parameters of the movie business that exist as we are.
And I mean, that's a very fair point. I think my extremely cynical reaction, even when I was seeing the ads for this, was like, with an animated film like this, what does it mean that Barry Jenkins directed it? And I don't mean to suggest anything about him specifically as much as, there are certain, like when Jon Favreau directs the 2019 Lion King remake, what is he directing versus the actual animation team that's putting this together? That's the thing that I always find fascinating. And certainly I will note with this movie specifically, I think there was a very long, I think it was before the film was released, there was a very long profile of Barry Jenkins in New York Magazine. Matt Zoller-Seitz wrote. And I know it ended up being a little controversial in terms, I know Matt, for example, is a big fan of this movie. I know he was very positive about this when he reviewed it at RogerEbert.com. And certainly his profile of the film and of Barry Jenkins was meant to be a pretty positive profile. But I think, I know I at least read it and I thought, boy, I feel bad for Barry Jenkins spending those 2 years of this, because you could see that he was grappling with some of the things we've been talking about in terms of how much of yourself you can put into a movie like this, how much you have to toe the company line. It's a really interesting profile. People should read it if they haven't. And I will say, I'm just looking right now at his upcoming titles. He's had a lot of different projects in the mix one way or the other. I think most recently he was announced to direct a biopic of Ronnie Spector. She'll be played by Zendaya. So
by Zendaya.
And it's from A24, and it's one of those where it feels like, yes, this feels like this ticks a lot of boxes for big deal indie movie coming out, I assume, in the next couple of years. So, I mean, he continues to be a really fascinating filmmaker. I think what I would say is I wish I saw a lot of Barry Jenkins in this movie. I don't really see a lot of him in this film.
I think you see more of him than you expect. I think the movie's at war with itself. I think you can really see the struggle of what he's trying to do, because there are shots that are truly Barry Jenkins shots. They're the shots of the people looking into the camera, in this case lions or other animals looking into the camera movements, the sweeping, but they're always truncated. And this is something I noticed the first time I watched it, and it's also even more so when I watched it this morning, because I could pay more attention to not having to deal with the plot, and looking to see if what I had originally written in my review about there were spots where I could see him, if that was actually true. And there are, but they're so truncated. It's almost like Disney said, okay, you held that shot too long, we got to cut it by about 10 seconds. And you see it a lot in this movie. If you really know if you're looking for Barry Jenkins-esque kind of things, you see it, there were attempts, and it seems like these attempts are just cut off at the knees at every single turn, which is in some ways oddly fascinating, but it's also, as you say, kind of depressing. You kind of feel bad for Barry Jenkins. I don't think this is the movie that he wanted, that he thought he was going to get, that he was making. I don't think it's the movie that he was making when he was shooting it or whatever you want to call it, animating it. This is the movie that he was able to accept.
Yeah. I agree. And Scott, unless you have anything else you wanted to add about this one, I think we can, with that, probably wrap it up.
All right. So with that, it's time to turn down the volume on Mousterpiece Melodies. What's on the playlist for our next episode? From 1946, Make Mine Music. And while you wait, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. Odie Henderson, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we mentioned your credits at the top of the show, but as a reminder, can you please let listeners know where they can find you on the internet?
Sure. I'm the chief film critic of the Boston Globe, so you can find me there. I'm on Blue Sky, odienator.bsky.social, and I'm also on the evil LinkedIn.
I don't think that's the most evil of the social media platforms. LinkedIn,
no, it's not.
It's not great, but it's not the best.
No. I could have said I was on X, which would have been horrible, but I'm not on X. I haven't been there in years on X. So
hey, hang on, do you mean
the best place to get me?
Do you mean X, the everything app? That's what I hear it's called. I remember the days when I was on Twitter. Those days are long over. Anyway, we'd love for all of you to listen along. Tell us what you think. Did you see Mufasa the Lion King when it was released in December, or if you checked it out on Disney Plus? Do you love the songs of this film? Are you Lin-Manuel Miranda just listening to this like full of fury and bile? You've been managing for 90 minutes to listen to us drag you over the coals for these songs in some capacity. No, seriously, if you have any comments, questions, or opinions you'd like to share, you can reach me at mousterpiececinema@gmail.com. Follow me on Blue Sky at Mousterpiece. I will only briefly note that as we are approaching the beginning of July, it's almost the end of the second season of Poker Face. I continue to do weekly reviews of that show over at Episodic Medium. So definitely check those reviews out if you'd like to. And Scott, where can our listeners find you online?
You can find me again on Blue Sky at Scott Renshaw, and I'm on Letterboxd at Scott Renshaw as well. My primary outlet is Salt Lake City Weekly, and you can find me there at cityweekly.net, where I'll be handling the new reviews of this week, including Jurassic World Rebirth. And I'm Scott Renshaw. And I'm Josh Spiegel.
Versus T-Rex.
You sound so excited about it, Scott. Anyway, I'm Josh Spiegel, and we'll see you all next time on Mousterpiece Melodies.